Good evening. Thank you for making time to join tonight's webinar. My name is Amy Bach. I'm one of the founders of United Policyholders, and I'm so sorry for the circumstances that made it necessary for you to be on a webinar like this, but really proud that United Policyholders and the experts that are in our network, our volunteers, our advisors, our staff, and our board members have invaluable expertise that should help you with the challenges that you are navigating as somebody who was impacted by a wildfire, but whose home did not burn. So we did a similar webinar earlier this year, and the recording of that is on, you can find it on our website, the slides and all. And we have been continuing since that time to be in close communication with many of your households. We are working closely with partners in the area, three of whom have collaborated with us to bring the information that we're presenting tonight. And we are very, very well aware that in addition to the trauma of um, still being in limbo this long after the fire, having had your home damaged, and all the uncertainty that you're grappling with, that many of you are facing the end of your additional living expense, temporary living expense insurance payments, and you're very worried. And we are well aware of those problems and the fact that housing is continues to be very expensive in the area, and that you're grappling with some really, really frightening conditions. Our organization has been working in wildfire areas now for 3.5 decades. And I will say that the conditions that we're encountering now are different from any other situation we've worked, even the Marshall Fire. So, with that said, we're going to get into tonight's program. I want to thank those of you who submitted questions. I want to remind you, you can download and follow the slide deck as you wish, or understand that we will be recording tonight's program. It's being recorded, and you'll be able to watch it at your convenience. So you don't really need to be worrying about taking a lot of notes. You can watch it again. Um, so the main message I want to get to you is try to relax your shoulders, let the information come to you, um, and know that if something was unclear and you heard somebody say something, you'll be able to hear it again. We generally get the recordings posted pretty quickly after. So just a quick reminder about United Policyholders, why you can trust the information that we bring you. We are a 501(c)(3). We're a nonprofit. We don't sell anything. You can't hire us. But we have a very, very deep levels of understanding of the problems that come after wildfires and the strategies that you can use to try to get those problems solved. We have been doing this work through our Roadmap to Recovery program since the 1991 Oakland Berkeley fire. We have been brought our services to communities since every major wildfire in California since then. Our program consists of guidance focused on financial insurance, decision making, and emotional recovery, but we also do a lot of advocacy. We're very involved in advocating for you on some of the issues around smoke damage and insurance. Our work is funded by grants and donations. We have lots of amazing volunteers. And then, of course, we partner with other nonprofits. We have a professional staff, and these are just some of the type of consumer-oriented professionals that lend their expertise to us. And we have an amazing panel tonight of those people. So these are the two libraries that we offer for those of you who lost homes in Ventura last December, those of you, I'm sorry, whose homes were damaged last December, and those of you whose homes were damaged in January of this year. So we try to keep those libraries up to date. We add things as we find them. Just a reminder that we're here to give you general guidance, not legal advice, even though I'm an attorney, Dan Veroff is an attorney. Insurance policies are legal contracts, but we are here to give you guidance, right? Our speakers are volunteering their time as educators. Our panel tonight is Chris Griffith, who's the VP of Operations at the Anderson Group. He's a restoration professional. Janine Humphrey, who is an indoor air quality expert with Mars Environmental, based in Colorado, lots of experience with the Marshall Fire, working for a lot of clients now in the Los Angeles area. Sandra Moriarty with Resolve SF. I joked that she has so many letters after her name, we couldn't even put them on here. Sandy has decades of experience in the insurance industry as a claim adjuster, also owned a restoration company for a period of time, and is now both an expert witness in litigation against insurance companies, but also a public adjuster, and just an all-around expert on insurance claim handling, and with a pretty heavy focus these days on smoke damage. We also have Dr. Joe Newsma, PhD with Superior Toxicology and Wellness. He's a toxicologist and also did a lot of work after the Marshall Fire and is connected with the LA situation. We also have Sean Rao, a certified industrial, I'm not sure what EC, he's an industrial hygienist with the ECS group, has been working for LA wildfire impacted clients now since the very beginning, very, very deep in the situation down there. And then we have Dan Veroff, an attorney with Merlin Law Group, who is handling a lot of smoke damage claims for clients in the LA area, and has been with me and the United Policyholders team on the journey to really provide as much good information to smoke impacted households as we possibly can. I want a special thanks out there to Jane Lawton Patel with Eaton Fire Residents United. If you were impacted by the Eaton fire and you haven't heard of Jane, you definitely want to go to their website. You'll hear from her in a few minutes, doing really important work collecting test results, and digging as deep as they can into the science around the effects of an urban conflagration, a WUI, a wildland urban interface wildfire, which is a very unique set of circumstances. I want to thank Alyssa Ashwood and Krista Copeland with Palisades Standing Homes and Team Palisades. If you were affected by that fire, you want to be connected with those gals. I just want to shout out to somebody who's probably not even on tonight, Carrie Waite. She has been a volunteer with the United Policyholders since, I think 2013. She is based in Colorado. She was one of the first people to say, I think insurance companies should be paying for testing before any cleaning or remediation happens. And she has been digging into the science of what wildfire smoke for years, and she's mentoring some people in LA, and she has been a big driver of United Policyholders' involvement in this issue. And then I just want to give a nod to Dawn Bolstad Johnson with Kaizen Safety Solutions, who's not here, but who, along with Janine Humphrey, has been one of the experts that has been helping United Policyholders get our arms around what this is all about and why people in your situation are having such a hard time, and what we can do about it. So just here's a few things that we know. And bear with me because I think probably all of you know these things too. The 2025 LA wildfires generated unprecedented levels of toxic byproducts. That's number one. Two, home insurance is supposed to cover the cost of restoring a home as close as possible to pre-loss condition, subject to policy limits. In California, smoke is covered just like fire is covered by statute. It's a mandatory coverage in a home insurance policy in this state. Testing before cleaning should be standard protocol, but it hasn't been. In general, the way many insurers have been handling smoke damage claims is outdated and not safe or adequate in light of current scientific and medical knowledge. Finally, 5, official indoor air quality standards for some of the byproducts of the Eaton and Palisades fire do not yet exist. So that's an additional challenge that we are all grappling with. So a few reminders, and this is all sort of the gospel according to United Policyholders, and then we're going to get into answering the questions that got submitted to us prior to tonight. So one, we want to remind you to continue to do your best to be businesslike about your insurance claim, to understand what happened to your property, how was it damaged, and what needs to be done to restore it. Keep your focus on that. Identify trustworthy professionals and then go on facts, not rumors. Keep a daily record. So don't stop with the compulsive note taking and writing things down. Super important. Document and track all your communications with your insurers and their representatives in writing, and that includes vendors they send, testers they send, adjusters they send. Save all your receipts, keep that up. Keep track of your expenses. This is a link to a sample of a spreadsheet we offer that you can use. Use our resources. And then above all, be persistent. Get qualified help. Don't give up. You're not alone. So some of the important principles that we have been putting out there in areas like yours. If your home has been exposed to smoke or debris from a wildfire, your insurance company should work with you to retain reputable and qualified professionals to do the following. Thoroughly inspect, measure, test, and assess the interior and exterior of your home, inside and out. And this is key because in a lot of cases, this has not been happening, including basements, crawl spaces, attics, duct systems, and wall cavities, heating, cooling, ventilation systems. That's a thorough inspection. That is legally what insurance companies are required to do, but that has not always been happening. Number two, have a remediation plan prepared that addresses all the findings of the inspections and the testings. Then have somebody do the work that's called out in the plan in a satisfactory and timely manner, and then this is really the insurer's obligations, pardon me, conduct post-cleaning testing to confirm successful remediation and safe indoor air quality. And then if that post-cleaning testing reveals lingering problems, that there are still toxic conditions, several rounds of remediation may be necessary. This is not a one and done situation. Coverage and an insurer's responsibility. So wildfire debris damage, that's smoke, ash, char, particulates, etc., is fire damage, and it must be covered per California Insurance Code 2071. And why do I emphasize this? Because there have been some legal battles going on in the courts, and the FAIR Plan and some insurers have been trying to make the argument that somehow smoke is different and their responsibility is different. It's not. If you or a family member have respiratory issues or chronic health conditions, proper remediation must address those conditions and protect that family member. It's always a good idea to confirm in writing, get confirmation from a medical professional of any condition that anybody in your household has that makes you more vulnerable, and provide that written documentation to your insurer. And then finally, your insurer should not cut off your temporary living expense benefits and force you to move back into a home that hasn't been properly remediated. But policy deadlines can be a problem, and we're going to be talking about that tonight. This is a sample of a letter that we offer for you to customize and use to request in writing that your insurer extend your additional living expense and or loss of use policy benefits. You can find that on our website. There's a link there, and you have to make it customized to your situation. And what are some of the hot spots? What kind of tests are appropriate, required, necessary? Where should testing be conducted and how? And then soft goods and HVAC ducts, can they be cleaned or do they need to be replaced? Drywall, insulation, hardwood floors, these are all items that a lot of people are having fights about with their insurance companies. And then destructive testing. Do you do it? Do you not do it? When and where? When is it warranted? Where do you do it? And then the biggest, I think, probably the most expensive question is, when does a partial loss become a total loss? Can you trust your insurer's adjuster or expert? This is just information that we've been putting out there for a long time. I think by now, this far along, this close to the 1 year anniversary, I think probably everybody on this call knows and understands that insurance companies bring in their people And very often you need to bring in your people. And that's just how it goes. It shouldn't be that way. And sometimes insurers bring in reputable people. It's not a black and white. But you, as the homeowner, really need independent assessments. And in this day and age, a lot of people are having to pay out of pocket for that. Okay, and without proper inspections and testing, opinions as to what needs to be cleaned and how are rarely accurate. And it pains me to say it because I know how many of you have had your claims handled with cleaning first without testing. But it's not obviously ever too late for that to be fixed. All right, so this is the code section in California that gives you the right, and you don't have to be in litigation or have a lawyer, to request in writing and get copies of documents in your claim file. And you can see the whole list here. So all documents that relate to their evaluation of damages, including but not limited to estimates, bids, scopes of loss, drawings, plans, reports, etc. It doesn't say they have to be final. It just says everything that the insurer has got in your claim file. Now, there is an attorney work product exclusion to this or exception to this, but the document has to have been prepared for an attorney. So because your insurance company has the obligation to adjust your claim in good faith, and whatever, there should be plenty of stuff in that claim file that's available to you free of charge by asking. And finally, why does testing matter? Because it measures and documents how a wildfire impacted the interior and exterior of the structure and what needs to be remediated. And of course, it provides critical documentation. So this is the order, the ideal order. Again, understanding. For many of you, probably most of you, this has not been the order, but this is the ideal order. Pre-cleaning, inspection and testing, scoping and pricing a remediation and restoration plan, doing the remediation restoration, and then post-cleaning testing. So I want to give Jane a chance to talk to us about this slide. Jane with Eaton Fire Residents United. Tell us what the share testing is and what resources EFRU is offering to Eaton Fire impacted residents.
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this event. I'm really excited to be here and with such an incredible panel of people. And I really appreciate United Policyholders' partnership through what has been one of the most difficult times in my life, and I'm sure for many of my community members and neighbors. Eaton Fire Residents United. EFRU is a resident-led group of local homeowners, scientists, and researchers documenting contamination in standing homes impacted by the Eaton fire in Altadena, Pasadena, and Sierra Madre. Our mission is to protect residents and cleanup workers through science-based testing, transparent reporting, and safe remediation practices. What we do, we compile licensed industrial hygienist testing results into a public pre-remediation and a second post-remediation map to inform residents and evaluate remediation effectiveness and advocate for insurance coverage, public funding, and stronger recovery standards around testing and remediation. So what do we map? We map contaminants of ash, soot, char, asbestos, lead, and all of the other CAM17 heavy metals, which do all exist on the EFR map, every single one of them, as well as lithium now. We would map other contaminants, but we don't get enough testing around VOCs and dioxins and furans and PAHs. Data quality, reports from 100% licensed professionals, certified labs, and include a chain of custody. So these are the requirements for the tests that we accept and we map. It can't be something that someone just picked up a test that they used from Home Depot to test their homes. These are all from licensed professionals who are industrial hygienist has to go through a certified lab, and it has to have a chain of custody, these reports. Privacy and participation. All reports are immediately anonymized, removing all personal data. As soon as we get this test in, we remove any personal information, your names, your address, any kind of identification code an industrial hygienist might have put on there, photos, diagrams, everything. Before our researchers receive these reports. And so it is on a private server where only 2 people have access to it. We only map locations to the closest cross streets in order to protect identities. So that gives you an idea of where these contaminants were found in a general area, but we definitely protect all residents who submit their material to us, their reports to us. Residents with pre or post remediation testing are encouraged to contribute to help strengthen the case for comprehensive funded testing and remediation. So as many of you know, there are no set protocols. EFRU is collecting this data, and we currently have the largest reported data set in the nation for contamination in homes impacted by WUIs. And the more information we get, the more we can advocate for our community and other communities as well throughout LA and the larger part of our state and the country, hopefully, in future WUIs. So your data really, really makes a difference. We really appreciate everyone who has submitted thus far. It has allowed us to come out with a recent statement that occupancy should only happen after clearance. For those of you who are able to see our press conference on November 7th, we are making inroads in conversations with local government, and we are pushing state government to recognize clearance before occupancy so that no one is forced back into a contaminated home before it is properly remediated. Thank you so much. Oh, and one last thing, Krista Copeland is actually with Standing Structures on Eaton Fire. She has a great website. Yeah, she's a great Facebook page. So for those of you in the Eaton area who have not joined Standing Structures EF, it's a terrific place. It has 3,000 people in the Eaton Fire area who daily discuss their recovery process in the Eaton Fire area. So check that out if you are on the Eaton Fire area. And all those in Palisades, big wave to you. Eaton Fire Residents United supports you too. And we're proud to be in this battle with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Alyssa Ashwood, if you want to just quickly say what Team Palisades, what kind of resources you are offering to people who have standing homes and insurance problems.
Team Palisades is the neighborhood organization organizing into blocks so that neighbors can help each other. And while those blocks were all organized geographically based on what we learned from the Marshall Fire survivors, it became clear that standing homes needed their own block. So across the entire Palisades, that block formed but that wasn't enough. That wasn't big enough to solve the kind of problems we're seeing. So we have been working, bringing Krista and I and Jane and the entire EFRU team into conversation, bringing in Marshall survivors, and of course, United Policyholders has been super supportive in doing this webinar and all of the work that you've done in the neighborhood. But we really find the point of bringing people together is that neighbors help neighbors, both in an emergency and after. So if you're not part of Standing Homes block in the Palisades and want to join, please do so. And then hopefully in the 2026, what it will look like even further is LA Standing Homes, bringing together the power of all the communities to get the things done that we're going to be talking about tonight. Thank you, panelists, for being on tonight.
Thank you, Alyssa. I'm all for that. LA Standing Homes, one group if you can, and one voice. I think there's going to be a lot to do in the legislature. There's just a lot to do to pull ourselves through this phase of disputes that shouldn't be disputes. So thank you. Okay, we're all going to take a little breath. Okay, so we're going to get into pre-cleaning inspections and testing. And again, I understand a lot of you are like, hey, they already cleaned my house. But we're just going to hit a few of the highlights. So, these are the components of urban wildfire debris. These are probably words that a lot of you are sadly very familiar with. Who should be doing the testing? It can be an industrial hygienist, it can be an indoor air quality professional. The cost will depend on square footage of a home. There's a wide cost range. And there, of course, are limits on testers' ability to test for certain materials, such as asbestos or lead. So I'm going to start with Janine and Sean. So, Janine, what are the professional designations for people who do post-wildfire testing, and what are the limits of what they can test for?
There's
Let's see.
there's no single certification or license that really covers everything. A lot of it is going to be ACAC certified, CIH certified. Those are going to be the two main categories that people are going to fall into. Not everybody can do the lead and asbestos testing that is out there, so that'll be some of the limitations and some of the things that they cannot test for. But
So
it's
you have to have a license to test for asbestos?
You have to have a license in the state of California to test for asbestos and lead. For me, I'm licensed in Colorado. I'm not licensed in California, so I refer out to other companies for that and recommend people do that. I did speak with CDPH and DOSH at the beginning. If you are in the CAM 17 and you are focused on not just lead, other metals out there, then you are well within your regulated rights, but those are about the limits is usually the asbestos and lead.
Okay. Sean, what's your designation, and how can somebody know if somebody has actually got the right experience to test their home after a wildfire?
My specific designation is a certified indoor environmental consultant, which basically spans the entire breadth of it, whether it be fire, microbiological, chemical, things of that nature, all fall under that. In addition, specifically as Janine had just alluded to, is the CAC, which is Certified Asbestos Consultant. In order to be able to take asbestos samples in the state of California, you need to be either a CAC or working under a CAC as a certified SST. And then the same thing falls in for lead, although lead's a little interesting, and that is AIHA did convince CDPH to allow CIHs to perform lead sampling, which is not abnormal because CIHs on a regular basis do perform metal sampling. So they were able to actually allow that designation to move through, and they don't have to have, as far as lead goes, they don't have to have any certification at all.
Okay, so with all these fancy letters here, we've got a few of them spelled out. AIHA, American Industrial Hygiene Association, ACAC, you heard both of them mention that, American Council for Accredited Certification. Sandy, which contaminants should be tested for before remediation begins? This is a huge area of controversy. And then where should they be collected from, and what methods should be used? What matters here in this context?
Well, the contaminants that should be tested for, you could go, unfortunately, it's sort of a financial question sometimes, because obviously the more you test for, the more expensive it is. So there really has to be a cost benefit analysis there. I believe at minimum that these properties should be tested for lead, because there's known lead in the area. I believe in the metals, the heavy metals sampling. To get an idea, most of these houses have enough soot, char, and ash that you can see visually. So to me, it's more of a quantification when you're testing for the soot, char, and ash. So I really think that relying on your environmental consultant is a good idea, because they can take a look at the property, they maybe know the area, and they can give you advice on what's good. As far as where things should be collected from and what methods should be used to do collecting, I think I would defer to Dr. Joe, because I am the claims person.
Right.
I do have my opinions, but I do, I think that they're not as important as his.
I appreciate that. I really do,
Hmm.
because I think we hear all the time about, oh, well, the insurer only took it, the tester that the insurer brought out, only tested, in this area, but they should have been, done it in that area. So, Dr. Joe, where should samples be collected from, and what methods are reliable to? I know there's like the tape lift, there's a wipe, so
Sure.
speak to us.
Um, the samples should be taken from traffic areas on hallways, at windowsills, in air return areas where that air exchange happens, because houses are designed to breathe. And everybody who has a standing house whose house was filled with smoke knows that that smoke got in somehow. If you know all your windows were closed, it still got everywhere in your house. So you want to look for those track marks where you can see the traffic areas where either people were walking in hallways or the air returns were going. And it is very much a financial decision, because if you're battling the insurance company's samples who are trying to say your house is fine, wipe your walls down and move back in, you need to show that there's bad stuff in your house. So at the bare minimum, you got to get the heavy metals uh, uh, detected, and if you can, the dioxins and furans, because all of these heavy metals and dioxins and furans are associated with the particles in the smoke, and those particles are gonna settle to the lowest levels. So that's why you sample your floors. That's why you sample the air returns at the floors, and that's why you sample the traffic areas. So that's basically the answer to that question from my
Okay.
perspective.
Thank you. Thank you. And so for the those of you who are with us, and thank you again for joining us, just to set expectations, we are going to go until 6:30. So this is an hour and a half webinar. So just for your own planning, thank you again for staying with us. So what does a thorough inspection include? At a minimum, it should be the roof should be inspected. Wood under the roofing material needs to be looked at. It really depends. Each house is different, right? And how close was it to homes that burned? Where was it in relation to the plume, etc. Um, then structural steel and iron can transfer heat and destabilize a foundation or retaining wall. There's a lot that can happen to stucco, siding, and concrete. Windows are really important to check. Um, Plumbing and heating systems, interior walls, and framing. Commonly overlooked damage, indoor air quality, ducts. And you heard Dr. Joe mention it does matter during the fire when you evacuated. Did you leave the doors and windows open? Was the AC on? Chimneys, attics, and crawl spaces, ceiling nooks, insulation, which can be a sponge for toxins, underlayment, sheathing, subfloors, wall cavities. These are just commonly overlooked areas of damage. So, Dr. Joe, how can wildfire smoke and debris enter a home? What are the pathways through which they can contaminate the home?
This concept is discussed just ad nauseum in the paper that Dave Phelan and I recently published. You Google my name and industrial hygiene method, you'll find it. I made it free for everybody. It's open source, so you don't have to pay for that article. But houses are designed to breathe, so it gets in the eaves, it gets in every crack and crevice, it gets in around all the pipes that go through the buildings. And if your windows are older than about 5 years, they're going to get in and around your windows as well. And your windows is only as good as the last time you actually put a good fresh bead of caulk around it. Every single crack and crevice gets the particles into your house, because you can't see the particles. They're extremely small. There was a slide up that talked about that. So, and then if there's heat, thermal, then there's a thermal effect. And if there was any water that was applied to your house to keep it from burning, then there's water dynamics as well. Airflow dynamics, heat, and water all affect how things get into your house and where they go once they are in the house.
Okay, thank you. Um, can you sort of answered this. Let's just ask uh, if if contaminated components are not removed, is is there a risk of off-gassing?
Yes. The depending upon how long and how hot your house got and how contaminated, what the smoke and particles are doing are they are adhering and absorbing to everything in that house, whether it's drywall, hardwood floor, tongue and groove paneling, HVAC vents, flex tubes, water pipes, everything will absorb these volatiles, semi-volatiles, and particulates. And over time, these things will slough back off and recontaminate a house a little bit at a time. And the smaller exposures over time are significant toxicologically to occupants of the house. That's why when many Marshall Fire families were told their house was good, move back in, they still got sick.
Yeah. So because we're gonna get more into the nitty-gritty of some of the areas that are very controversial with insurers, like do you replace the hardwood, do you replace drywall? So I'm gonna move on, Sean, and get to you on another one. What is the process for determining the depth of the contamination to things like sheetrock, insulation, HVAC? Can you answer that, Dr. Joe?
Sure. There's one industrial hygienist that's running around Southern California, Dawn Johnson, that does an excellent job digging out cyanide in drywall, and it does get quite deep. So it's all based on your unique situation, and
Right.
every single house is different. That's why you should test first and see what you're dealing with before you set down on a path of remediation, because each house can be different and each contaminants can be different. The ultimate toxins have to be known before you turn around and say, let's rip out sheetrock or let's rip out hardwood floors.
Right.
Because I've also seen in the Palisades data sets that had extensive remediation to remove as much particulate matter that could be removed. Those contaminants came back down to what I would consider safe levels. And I actually told a family last week, yes, if the lead remediation works, your house will be safe to move back into with you guys, with your children, and your grandchildren. They were happy to hear that. Now they have to wait to see if the lead remediation works.
Okay. So, I mean, I definitely do want us to give people some confidence, and we are going to try that some of these situations can be remediated without without like really, really extensive destructive testing. So,
Yes.
Sean, what testing do you recommend to measure if drywall and hardwood is contaminated and needs to be removed? As a context, we have three young children, and the 4-year-old is asthmatic. Do you know of any studies that would support having the drywall and hardwood replaced?
Not specific studies. What the studies are more associated with are the particular contaminants. So if you get to the extreme level of the dioxins and furans, there's no known restoration methodology to approach that.
Okay.
So that's a guaranteed R&R. The children and the
Wait, I'm sorry, what is
asthmatic,
R&R?
remove and replace.
Remove and replace. Okay.
The children and the asthmatic are an immunocompromised population, but in this situation, we really need to look at every single occupant being immunocompromised. They've been through, at this point in time, 11 years worth of a disaster, relocated, their family's upside down. Their immune system is not healthy and they're not happy right now. So, with that being said, to replace it, you would need to have the appropriate sampling to document that it's contaminated. Going back to what Dr. Joe had indicated earlier, simple wipes with cyanide, the heavy metals, what is in a wood floor? That's a very comical one. So we'll replace carpeting theoretically, but then all of a sudden there's this argument about wood floor. There's no documented studies that state that you can get it out of a wood floor, the cracks and the crevices, any better than you can get it out of carpet at this point in time. Could you even sand that wood floor? You could try, but how are you going to get down into the tongue and grooves between it? You're not going to get into that valley. It's going to stay in that valley and it's going to harbor there and come out later on. So therein lies, it's number one, it's based upon the data. What is the global data? What is that state? What has been sampled for each one of these particular materials of concern? And then most importantly, what is the probability that that can be removed? And the probability of anything like a dioxin furan, the cyanide, even getting into the regulated metals or the lead and regulated asbestos, this is very difficult to remove from these scenarios on a large scale basis. If you're talking about a small scale exposure, then that's a different story. You're talking about a small area, one room, one location of a home that's concerned. As Dr. Joe alluded to earlier, there's not a single part of any of these structures that have not been affected from top down, inside, outside.
Okay, so I'm going to switch over to Chris Griffith and ask you, Chris. We've talked about that with the hardwood floor, it really depends on the circumstances. So, can you speak to that? Whether there's like if the hardwood floor has a really good seal on it, does that make a difference? You have to unmute. Chris, are you talking? Because we can't hear you.
Sorry, I
There you
forgot I
go.
was on mute. Yeah, as Dr. Joe pointed out, every house is different. They're all built differently. They're made to take in air differently and things like that. We do look at hardwood flooring. A lot of them, if they're newly sealed, you can get down and see if there's cracks in them and stuff like that. So then the concern would be looking to see if that smoke, ash, or whatever that material is got under the floor from maybe the edges or something, or if that's sealed. If everything's sealed, then we still look back to the hygienist for suggestions. But if there's clearly gaps in an older floor or something, and there's soot and ash in there, that's the first conversation we have with the hygienist. Because even if we could clean that, at the end of the day, somebody needs to test to confirm that that material is clean underneath the floor. So we always work with a hygienist or somebody on site to determine that.
Okay, and again, remember, Chris is a restoration professional, so he's not doing the testing, he's doing the work that the test directs. Okay, if I remediate for lead, is that the same as remediation for everything else? So I don't need to test for everything else? Janine, you want to come back and speak to that?
So lead is cleaned up through HEPA vacuuming and wiping and things like that. So there are certain things that can be cleaned up the same. However, not everything can be remediated the same way as lead. That is a common misconception. Just because you are going to remediate for lead, that you don't need to test for everything else. You should be testing for other things because there are other contaminants such as lithium, VOCs, SVOCs that may need to be handled differently. And also, if there are certain chemicals that are present, you have to be careful in what you're going to use inside your home as you start to combine things for chemicals and cleanup and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you. Before we get to this next one, I have I have a point that that actually Dawn wanted us to make, that it's very important to look at gable vents as a point of entry, even if they're over a vaulted ceiling. Janine, did you want to, I see you nodding. Do you want to explain that?
Gable vents are very important to consider when you're walking around the home. Gable vents, ridge vents, all of that stuff, that is a pathway for smoke. And if you have a vaulted ceiling and there is no access, that smoke is going in there. It is going to go in there. It is going to fill inside there. If there is insulation, it is a sponge. It is going to hold on to it. It has to be opened up. It has to be accessed. It has to be taken care of properly, because if you don't, it's going to just sit in there. And then when it gets a hot day, sun cooks on your roof, things are going to release. It's going to off gas. You have to, gable vents are very important.
So,
Okay.
Amy, can I add to that?
Yes, please.
So I don't think what most people realize is attics are made to draw air from the lower portion and go to the outer portion. So if you have a fire or contaminants outside, your eaves are acting like a vacuum. So it may not be the gable vent or the ridge vent so much, but it's the fact that it's drawing air from the outside. As that air heats up, that conversion happens faster. So your roof is made to do that and pull air from the outside. So normally for us, that is always one of the first places that are checked or remediated.
Okay, thank you. Okay, when insurers send vendors like Strike Check or HVAC-I to assess electronics or HVAC systems, their evaluations often appear limited to basic functionality. Is it working? And they don't necessarily assess soot, ash, or char intrusion or related safety risks. Sandy, what options do insureds have to challenge or supplement these assessments? I'm going to start with you.
Sure, sure. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that the testing of HVAC systems, so not the ducting, but the actual, mechanical part, there is a standard. There's a standard out there that talks about specifically where in the unit the samples need to be taken, how they're supposed to, sort of take it apart and take the samples to see how far like the particulates went into the HVAC. And I have seen like 3 of those this whole disaster. I haven't really seen anything. HVACI certainly doesn't do that. They come out and they, take a sort of a look at it like that and say everything's great. It turns on. That's not sufficient. Same thing with Strike Check. So Strike Check comes out and basically opens the fridge, and if the light goes on and it's cooling, everything's a-okay. Well, everybody here, I think, is probably educated enough now to know that the smoke particles. There's a charge to them that's attracted to the wiring in some of these electronic components that it might not manifest right away, but after a while, it will cause problems. So that's the first thing to do, is to push back and say, look, opening the fridge and the fact that the fridge is cooling is not a sufficient evaluation of the fire impact to those things. Same with the HVAC. Also, flexible ducting, really hard to clean. They have those ridges. I have some really good illustrations that I send to carriers that kind of explain how that works, because duct cleaning things are like circular brushes that go along, and that's fine and dandy if you have a really rigid, really smooth ducting system, but most of these homes have flexible dusting with ridges that make it almost impossible, and they also get really damaged when those machines are in there. So having a little bit of education and knowing how to push back, I'm happy to share the testing standards. I can give them to Amy and
you know what, you can
way.
put them in the chat, and I can and we will when we can repost the slides, and we'll add a slide with the
Sure.
standard. We also have a smoke damage help library, which will make sure that gets added if it's not in there. And you mentioned that I know you are functioning as a public adjuster in some claims, as well as a consulting expert. And so, this question of what options do insureds have to challenge or supplement. And you mentioned, you can send the insurer the copy of the standards. So, for people who are either, handling these on their own, or if they have a public adjuster or a lawyer, but they still are trying to get their house, remedied. So you recommend, what do you recommend?
Well, I mean, if you're working on your own without sort of professional assistance, or even if you do have professional assistance, you can put it in writing, just like UP always says. Put your concerns in writing. Ask them to explain how they evaluated these items. How did your person evaluate the electronics or the HVAC system? You can, try to escalate it to supervisors, file a request for assistance with the Department of Insurance, different things like that. I think, that's how I would do it. You could seek out other experts that know how to do the actual testing and know how to document the damage to these items. So I think information's key.
Yep.
I want to add that there are certain certifications and things like that for this type of cleaning and duct systems. Every HVAC company usually are there for repair or to check airflow. NATCA, National Association of I don't know, duct cleaning and something else, is one key one. And actually, they have a white paper on that you do not clean flexible duct. That is part of their standard.
Mhm.
So we're a NADCA firm and we do work with hygienists because those are tough systems to test because you also have issues with being able to reach deep within that system to test the right parts. So
Yep.
I just want to point that out. There are professionals
Good.
out there in just about every aspect that are certified for this particular kind of situation. It's important to check on those designations.
Thank you. And I will say also for those of you who are here with us learning, this is just another, this is one event that we are offering. We are going to be continuing to offer events like this in the new year and in the months ahead. So, I'm going to try to get to all the questions. I'm not sure we're going to make it. I'm going to try. And just know that, yeah, we're not taking questions during the program, but every time we do one of these, we do have put out a form and you can ask questions. And then we do try to ask sort of the common ones. So thank you for bearing with us. My house has a near flat roof. You can all read this for yourselves. I'm going to start with you, Chris, on this one, because I think we already talked about it with the tongue and groove. That where a CIH is recommending removal of all building materials, um, would that include roof and tongue and groove ceiling? Oh, you're on mute again. Sorry, you left that mute.
Sorry. As we said again, every house is different, but in general, tongue and groove, I would say yes, remove. That's not a sealed space. There's no way to test behind it. You run into other issues. Some tongue and groove is actually just placed on the ceiling and not affecting the roof. There is tongue and groove where the roof is laid on top, or the ceiling is laid on top. The roofing, sorry, is laid on top of the tongue and groove, and that becomes an issue too. So again, that's obviously working with the hygienist on their reports and what's in there, and then the building consultant to decide, what that envelope looks like.
Yep. Sean, is there anything you want to add here? I just ignore the initials. Anything you want to add to Chris's answer?
No, I concur with Chris, and it goes back to Joe's original statement in the beginning. Every single one of these projects is different. So you literally have to, and this is horrible to say, but if, if these two neighborhoods that we're specifically talking about now, Palisades and Eaton, were 1,000 tract homes, our lives would be a lot easier. But because every single home in these neighborhoods is different, you have to treat it as its own. And it's from the sampling all the way down to how does the sampling data apply to that specific structure.
Right.
So then that way you can make the best recommendations on that structure for that family.
Okay. Thank you. All right. We're just going to try to keep moving. So this is just a reminder from UP that pre-cleaning testing reports and findings should include these things. All right. Let's see. I've had IH testing with recommendations that I dispose of all soft goods. Insurance says everything is cleanable. How do I push back? So this is obviously a very hot topic, and this is one of those areas where when United Policyholders first started doing webinars on smoke damage and your insurance rights way back, 2013, 2014, we were still really emphasizing that it really depends. Some soft goods can be cleaned and some need to be replaced. But in LA, in particular, Janine, what's your answer there? Are there some soft goods that can be cleaned, or what are we thinking here?
A lot of studies show that soft goods cannot be cleaned. When you get into textiles, curtains, clothing, carpeting, upholstered furniture, any of that, everything embeds into soft goods, whether it's clothing or it's a sofa. Curtains are a direct impact of a window. So when those contamination is coming in through that window, through that entry point, that curtain is going to act as a filter. It's going to absorb things. You cannot get everything out. There are way too many contaminants to assume that you are going to be able to get it all out. A lot of remediation companies focus on well, we can get the soot, char, and ash out. We can get the smell out. But when you start talking about the metals that don't degrade, you talk about the SVOCs, the PAHs, everything else that comes along with it, you are not going to get that out. And it is more cost effective to replace it than it is to clean it. And then to do all of those tests to confirm that that even happened.
Okay, well, Chris, I wanna hit you up on this. So unmute. So look, doesn't it depend though on, I mean, we wouldn't say as a blanket rule that every single house that has submitted a claim from the fire, that all soft goods within those homes have to be removed and replaced completely, right? Would it not, I mean, it depends, right?
I think it does depend, and we were hearing about contamination, but I think it's important to know that we refer as soot and ash as contamination too, also, right? So some items we believe can be cleaned. The two biggest questions, I'm sure Sean gets tired of me saying this, but one, can it be tested? Because if it can't be tested, then we would assume that it's contaminated. The second thing is cost effectiveness, is maybe we can get something clean, but is it going to cost us so much money to clean that it's not worth just purchasing something new. So
Right, right.
I think it's always a hot topic, and I think it takes more than one person to make those decisions. I think it's hygienist and remediation company working together.
Yeah. Okay, Sean, did you want to add something?
If it's cleanable, then that means it's testable. So going back to Chris's approach here, can you do the curtains? Can you do the textiles? Can you do a mattress? Can you do pillows? Well, of course you can, but to get the middle of a mattress, you've got to cut through it so it's really wherein cyanide, all the metals, so it becomes cost prohibitive from a restoration and a cleaning
Okay.
point of
So I think the bottom line is
view.
testing, and I think Janine made the
And
point.
again, as they indicated,
Okay.
but
Sorry,
again,
Sean, you're going in and out.
if
Sorry.
they are very low level, if they're very low levels, that's a little bit of a different story. When they're
Right.
really low levels of metals, that is, Palisades and Eaton on cleaning some of these porous contents related to very low levels of exposure.
Right.
Very,
Okay.
very
Insurance claim disputes, obviously, it's just a reminder,
like
nothing that any people don't
5
know.
micrograms.
Sorry, Sean, you're going in and out, and yeah, sorry. Um, See if you could check your internet connection and see if you could maybe refresh. Because we were only hearing like every other word. So with insurance claim disputes, again, not telling you anything you don't know. It's the testing methods and locations. Are you going to do CAM 17, heavy metal 7 and 9? Are you only going to test for soot, char and ash, which is what I think a lot of insurers, consultants have been saying. Clean versus replace, expert versus expert. So making your case where feasible, you want to participate in choosing your tester, and the company that's doing the remediation. You don't always have that choice. You want to make your clear request in writing. It is worth filing complaints with the DOI. Keep your expectations modest. They cannot be your free lawyer, but it is important to file a complaint with them, and go on record. Back up your request with documentation. Consider, if you can, paying for testing yourself, and then ask your insurer to reimburse you. And then if you get to a point where, which I think a lot of people are at, where you just are hitting a wall, hire a professional with expertise in representing clients on wildfire smoke damage insurance disputes. We worked really hard to curate this panel. There are plenty of other experts out there doing good work, but you can hear from this panel, that we are in a new age here of understanding. And even as we're talking, I'm getting messages from Dawn Bolstad-Johnson, such as UCLA is doing a study on textiles and fabrics and finding high VOCs in materials stored in closets and drawers months after the fire. So what the message I want to keep hammering is, it's a matter of understanding what happened to your house, okay? Here's another question. Dan, I'm so sorry you have not been we've not been tapping you, and I want to tap you. I know you have a lot of wisdom here. Given that the IICRC standard for smoke remediation didn't really establish clear guidelines for some of these things we're talking about, what contents that can and can't be remediated, how can insureds push for carriers to pay for the actual costs of things like contents mitigation when the carrier says everything can be cleaned with a light clean and refuses to pay for testing after cleaning?
Yeah, hi. Are you able to see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Great.
I know you probably
Yeah.
thought that I forgot about you, but I didn't.
No, that's okay. Well, as an attorney, I mean, my main job too is to make sure we bring in the right experts on the science and follow the science and be thorough there. And so there's a lot of ways to push back on the carriers, right, for the actual costs. I mean, the best way, of course, I think, is to just, do it, spend the money, go through the remediation, because from a litigation point of view, a dollar that you spent on work, you have a lot more leverage with, through an attorney, most likely, maybe through a publisher. You have more leverage with a dollar spent than a dollar you haven't spent. You can certainly just do what the carrier says to do and then just do some, testing after and see if it works. You can, get the opinion of a remediation company as to whether they're willing to perform the carrier scope, whether they're willing to warrant what the carrier scope is. Like Amy said, you can file a complaint with the Department of Insurance, but like everyone has said, every house is different, and every impact is different. And ultimately, to resolve a dispute that really gets into scientific details, you eventually need to get to court. Give your carriers every opportunity to do the right thing and to say yes, and don't always expect them to say yes, right? But once you've exhausted some of the things I've talked about, unfortunately, you do need to go legal if you're not getting a resolution, and there's not really any other way to do it when they stand on their position.
Yep. Yep. Okay. This is kind of, I'm gonna start to have to skip a few questions so that we get to the meat. Keep getting to all the meat. And we kind of touched on this. I mean, Sandy, is there anything you want to say different from what Dan just said?
I do a little bit because, I'm an IICRC triple master. So I'm a master smoke remediator, master water, master textiles. I'm not saying that I'm the most trained remediator on earth, but I am going to say that I was never trained how to remove lead, how to remove arsenic, cyanide, any of those things. And I am, going through to do my continuing education. I don't see there's a HAZWOPER thing that they can go through, but that's really to protect their workers. One of the things you can do is ask the remediation people that are recommended by their carriers who they're relying on. Well, what's your training? How are you trained in this? How
Mhm.
do you know how to get this stuff out? Because I don't know how, and I'm not saying I know everything, but I have gone through a lot of training, and I would venture to say more than a lot of the remediators out there. And it's not a simple, sweep it up type of deal. And
Right.
things have changed a lot,
Yeah.
in the time as things go on. So I just think that that's really important. And
Yeah.
do they want to take the liability for people's children going back into homes that, are they going to make that representation? And
Yeah.
one of the things that I recommend to people is write and say, you need to write me and assure me that your preferred vendor has made my home safe to re-inhabit from the
Yeah.
particles of the smoke. And I think that's pretty effective.
I agree. And our sample letter does lead people, to say, if you have a qualified person who will put in writing that they have reason to believe that my home is safe and rehabitable, then please provide us with that information, right? So this is another one. We have a report generated by Safeguard for the FAIR plan, and I think this is kind of a similar to what we were just talking about. Short of hiring an attorney, I mean, this really is pretty much exactly what we were just talking about.
Yeah. And unfortunately, with the FAIR plan, I think what's really important is to document your damage, document the actual contaminants that are in your house, where they are, and that you have a good, strong scope of remediation to deal with those. And based, unless something changes, go as far as you can. And then, unfortunately, with the FAIR plan, I just don't see any way out of not litigating these.
Yeah. And it is important, I think, also to litigate, to hire a lawyer who knows
Oh,
knows the ins and outs of the FAIR plan.
it's so important. It's so important. There are so many lawyers that are jumping in right now that are personal injury attorneys, and they're very smart and they're very, I'm sure, very good. I'm not knocking them. This is a really specialized
yeah.
thing. I explained statutes to an insurance lawyer today for over an hour. There's just a
Right.
lot of little
No,
things.
yes. And there's a lot of personal
So
injury attorneys cutting into this, and it's a different, when you're dealing with something like with the FAIR plan or an insurer, it's different. So, Sandy, should testing expenses be paid out of policyholder benefits or can you ask that your insurer cover them as a loss adjustment expense so
yeah.
that you're not
So
eating into your benefits?
yep. So the duty of an insured, there's really specific laws that talk about duties. Duties of an insured is to show the insurer, the carrier, that there is damage to their home that falls to an insured property. So, you've got a policy, you're insuring that property, you've got some sort of physical damage. Once you do that, your duties are to cooperate, let them see the property, do your lists, things like that. It's the insurer's non-delegable duty to do the investigation. And that investigation includes knowing the full extent of the impact of that fire on your house. So they have a duty to test your house. And it's just, we know so much now that there is no situation now that I can see where insurers shouldn't pay for testing, and it's a
Yeah.
loss adjustment expense because it is their investigation.
Yep.
And if you're running out of ALE limits and your home is not remediated, very interesting, if it took your insurer, say, 4 months or 5 months before they even offered to send a testing company out, and another PA just told me this, and it's actually pretty brilliant, is that you can ask them, if you're running out of ALE limits, to pay those first benefits as an adjustment expense while they are investigating the claim, and put it as an investigation expense. I've talked about making claims if they drag on too long and you run out of benefits. The benefit of having it as an adjustment expense, it's easier for the insurers to pay. If they pay it as, we made a mistake, and this is what are called an extra contractual benefit, they have to go way up the ladder. It takes a lot of insurance executives to approve we
An
made a
extra paying above
mistake
policy, right?
above the policy limits, but an expense payment's easier to do. So I think you've got a good argument for saying, hey, it took you X amount of time to investigate this claim. You should pay my ALE benefits out of as an investigation expense. If you're running out of limits.
Okay, all right. We're gonna kind of, like I said, I'm gonna have to kind of zip through a few things that we've really kind of answered here. Although, and Dan, I want to tap you again on this one. The insurer wouldn't do testing. When we gave them our report, um, they approved and funded the abatement estimate. Then they decided, while after the work had already started, they wanted a second opinion and etc. Can the insurer deny our right to follow our hygienist and abatement company's recommendations and force us to clean versus dispose? What rights do we have?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, the insurance company doesn't get to dictate what you do with your property, right? But they get to decide how much they want to pay you for it and how they want to come up with those amounts. And I've deposed so many insurance company folks who say, oh, we have the absolute right to disagree with anybody, including people we hire, including people you hire, right? We have the absolute right to change our mind, doesn't matter. So, I mean, can they do this? Sure. Should they do it? No, you've already started work. You've already, got yourself going down a road that it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube at that point. Unless the insurance company can really identify a solid reason why they need to do more testing, it seems pretty skeptical. So, I mean, I think the question really should be not about, do they have the right to do this? Because I mean, sure, they can try to do this, but what are you going to do about it, right? And I mean, definitely is a situation where you might want to consult an expert, definitely an expert hygienist, maybe an attorney. A lot of details to look at there, but it definitely indicates that something bad is going on. At the end of the day, what rights do you have? Like we said, you can file a complaint with the Department of Insurance. They can't do much when push comes to shove, or you can hire an attorney. But maybe at this stage, you just want to consult with an attorney and get some recommendations, because
Mhm.
kind of the adjustment's still ongoing. But there could be some really important strategic moves to make in such a situation.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to zoom through a few more of these ones. The FAIR plan, we're not going to get into details on this other than to say that if you have gotten a letter from the FAIR plan that looks a little bit like this, that's a good thing. But apparently, that saying that because of changes in the law, some of these provisions in their policy are no longer in effect. But apparently they're sending this letter to some people and other people are not getting it. So, uh, so let's see, how did California laws treat smoke? We're gonna skip this. This is the DOI complaint line. I'm sure you all have it. I'm going to answer this one. Is there anything we can do to counter the task force that's being stacked with insurance bias? Anyone that we can report to in our government or otherwise we're concerned about oversight and to investigate? Okay. I'm on this task force. Chris Griffith is on this task force. There has been a lot of overblown worrying about this task force. First of all, I'm on it, he's on it. The person who's chairing it is a longtime friend of consumers. We have worked together to solve problems after many disasters over the years. The composition of the task force, I will concede, is not ideal, but the task force there's two things I want people to understand. One, the task force is just fact finding. We are hearing presentations from various people. We have heard from Jane and her group and EFRU. We have heard from the Department of Angels. We have heard from Chris Griffith. We have heard from a variety of different people. Yes, we have heard from a group of experts that have been doing work for insurance companies for many years. The task force has no authority to issue regulations or laws. So I just want everybody to kind of understand that while the composition is not ideal, I just don't think people should be worrying as much as they're worrying about it. And we're going to move on from there. Not to mention the fact that I'm loud. And I have been working very hard to make sure that we are hearing from balanced perspectives in our work. Okay. First day we were allowed back to our property. We asked, okay, we've already covered a lot of this about the testing, so I'm going to skip this. I'm going to skip this one. Dan, some of my neighbors have had liens placed on their properties by companies, contractors, and insurance has not paid their bills. How do I protect myself in this process?
Absolutely. Well, so it's a legal issue, certainly. So getting legal advice is important. There are a lot of technical boxes that have to be checked by the contractors, remediation companies in order to have a legitimate lien. And a lot of times the lien isn't what we call perfected properly. So you want to evaluate whether all of those boxes were checked. One important thing, right, is to check the validity of whatever contract or agreement you had with them. A lot of these restoration companies have, authorizations to start work that are very broad. There's no definite sum, right? And then they hit you with a massive bill. Sometimes it's way over than than what they estimated at the outset. And and then of course, having a lien secured creates a cloud on your title, which creates other problems. But the contractor has to actually go through the legal process of foreclosing on that lien, and a lot of times, they're more interested in dealing with a negotiation than going through on that process. So. Certainly a time to try to push back and find if they've made any technical errors, and not just accept it and pay it off. You have a lot of options.
Okay, thank you. And I left out that the task force also heard from Janine Humphrey. Okay, we're going to skip a whole bunch of questions because we've answered a lot of them. And again, this deck will be available. And I want to make sure we hit a few of in this section. When is it safe to move back in? It's case by case, depending on the conditions. You should certainly consult a medical professional beforehand if you have health sensitivities. And obviously avoid moving back in until you have gotten the confirmation from a qualified professional. Again, we don't have enough time tonight. We got notified earlier by Alyssa that LA Unified School District is going to be reopening schools, and there's a lot of concern, legitimate about that because of everything that we know about this current situation. So a lot of what applies to homes will apply to schools, right? So, Dr. Joe, if a house fails clearance after remediation and you've used a certified lead abatement and asbestos professional, what are the recommended next steps? And does it matter how badly it failed clearance?
Yes, it does matter how badly it failed because if it's close, you redo the protocol and see if you can bring it up to standards. If it failed miserably, then you need to do the cost benefit analysis to say, is it a replace over a remediate?
Okay. If you receive clearance and an occupant starts showing reaction symptoms, what are the next steps? Let's see if Sean, I know you were having problems, but I feel bad. You want to try talking and see if we can hear you.
I would start first with seeking the consultation of a medical professional immediately.
Get
And
out of
then,
the house.
yep, get out of the house, relocate. It's not acceptable. And this is when you return, you don't want to have blinders on and think that your house is falling apart. There's a balance to this. But on the other hand, when you do return, and I would return in baby steps first, if you are reacting, your body is telling you something, you need to relocate, as Dr. Joe said, and then somebody needs to go in there, theoretically, your industrial hygienist, and they need to go in there with a fine-tooth comb and figure out what has been missed. Something's been missed.
Got it. Sandy, okay. We got our house remediated. We were told we're not entitled. Oh, they told me I'm not entitled to the report. You saw us lay out that statute that gives people the right. Is this something that you're hearing about a lot, that insurers are not complying and not giving people copies?
Yes, and the remediation companies have been instructed sometimes by insurers not to share their estimates and or documents. If the insurance company uses it for the adjustment, excuse me, the adjustment of the claim, then they are required to give it to you. It is something that I've seen the Department of Insurance be very helpful with. Every time that I have told people to seek help from the DOI on this issue, it has resulted in that document being turned over. If they don't turn it over, they can't rely on it. So I
Okay.
think that's the main thing. And then some of the hygienists, the one thing that stands out to me here is, 2 foot areas that needed to be cleaned again. Testing is very specific. You test here, without testing the whole room. Is it only that little space that needs to be recleaned? So I think that's something that really needs to be delved into.
Yep. Okay. Dan, our insurance adjuster has said that air is not covered and that our house will be restored to its pre-fire condition. How does that work? we could.
Oh, that's such a silly argument. So, yeah, I mean, air, sure, it's not property, it's not covered, but we're talking about, the interior of a home, and we're talking about, I mean, testing air to look for the presence of particulate, and all the other valuable reasons you may want to test for that, based on the hygienist. But look, I mean, some particulate sure stays in the air. I mean, asbestos, can be very light and float in the air, but they call them heavy metals because they're heavy and they fall, and stay on the ground. Soot, char, and ash tend to settle as well. So, that argument only tells me you're getting the runaround and you're not getting a serious review from your insurance company. And, you just gotta be assertive again and say, this question clearly indicates you're not taking it, seriously. Again, here is my question, here's my analysis. Please review it again.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Janine, after the remediation company has removed the lead from our home, do you recommend wiping down our kitchen shelves, flooring, countertops, etc.? If so, what should we use, and will there be chemicals left behind in the process?
So, well, I would not recommend wiping down anything yourself after the remediation companies remove stuff until you pass some clearance testing. You should not be going in and you should not be doing that until that is done. Once that is done and your home has been cleared and you back home, there are going to be follow-up process that you are going to have to do to maintain your home. As the contamination in the area is just going to be present for years to come. So chemicals can be left behind depending on what you use. There are some strippers, there's some encapsulants, there's some other things. It really kind of depends, and you want to make sure you're looking at like the safety data sheets and stuff like that to find out what is going to be common and what is going to be beneficial and what's not. But
Yeah.
before you do anything, get clearance testing.
Okay, and Janine, I know you talk about some of the work that you've done with your clients in Marshall to install to monitor, like that they've moved back in.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't even get to talk about encapsulation tonight, but that what are some of the things that you've done to help your clients monitor their air quality while once they're back in the home?
So a big part of this is, what's realistic for everybody.
Right.
And a lot of people don't have the capability to either move or to tear down the entire home. So in order to do that, you have to do full comprehensive testing. You can't do limited testing. You have to go and you have to do every type of testing that you can possibly think of. You have to know what you're dealing with. You have to make sure that the encapsulant that you are using is being done properly. You have to make sure that sealing is being done. You have to make sure that you are following up and conducting testing every year or every 6 months to monitor that air quality. What is the difference between when the air quality is without an air purifier running with activated carbon compared to when it is? What are the things that make a difference? And you have to make sure that you're replacing flexible ducting, HVACs, things that are compromised that are going to produce that are going to contribute to your air quality have to be considered as well. So it's a bigger picture than, just going in and saying, okay, let's just slap this paint on and call it good after cleaning. That's not how it works. And you can't do it that way. But you can monitor it for years to come as well.
Yep. Okay. We probably are, but let's go a couple minutes after 6:30. So bear with us. Because this is a big one. When neighboring homes are under construction, and contaminated soil has not been removed, can a home become recontaminated? Dr. Joe, and if so, how?
Yes, it absolutely can. You can get recontamination from a high wind day that picks everything up that's on the surface everywhere around you, or 3 blocks over if it's a 100-mile-an-hour wind, which we see commonly in Southern California and in the Marshall Fire. So it that contaminated soil will get back in, the particulates will get back in, and it's inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So these are just some reminders to for post mitigation follow-up. This will be in the slides. You can reference this after. Is it important to test for cyanide and VOCs after remediation? Sean, do you want to take this one?
Depending upon what was performed in the beginning, what the extent of restoration was. If you go and let's just say you don't replace any porous material, you don't replace carpeting, all the textiles, then yes, you're going to need to do everything at the end. You're going to
Okay.
need to check all those boxes off. If your structure has been gutted, then it's a different story. Do you really need to test for VOCs if you're standing, if the just framing members are standing? No, not really. So there's a balance. But what I would say is, as far as post restoration testing goes, you need to test for everything that was not identified in the beginning by your consultant or a trusted industrial hygienist that did the testing that showed that it wasn't there. So if they did cyanide in the beginning, the cyanide's not there, not the biggest concern later on. If they didn't do cyanide in the beginning, then you should probably do cyanide at the end. If you didn't do asbestos at the beginning, you should do asbestos at the end.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Just a couple more. Bear with us. We're going to skip this one. Resolving disputes. We've already kind of gone through this. The submitting your documentation in writing and stand your ground, filing a complaint with the department, consulting with a professional, filing a lawsuit, which can go to mediation, settlement, or trial. Dan, who is responsible for the cost of additional remediation if clearance is not achieved in post-remediation testing?
Great question. Well, I think it depends on why the clearance was not achieved. You know, if there's reason to believe the contractor, performed to workmanlike standards, then it's the insurance company's responsibility. Ultimately, they're required to pay you the cost to return the home to pre-loss condition. Insurance companies may try to blame the vendor that was chosen or blame their methods, and say it's not their fault. So it is important, to make sure you're looking at, maybe if the remediation company should be called to come back out to do something, without charging you extra for it. Maybe that's something to look at first. But barring that, the insurance company absolutely should be paying for that.
Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to have really just one last question for you, Dan, and I'm going to combine the two. So this is what remedies are available to a policyholder when insurers deny covering testing, and then also what remedies are available to a policyholder when insurers delay or deny ALE payments. I think at this stage, I think what people are going to be looking for is what can you do now if your insurer has sorry has said they were not going to pay for testing and or they're cutting off your ALE and your house is not clean.
Sure. Well, not paying for testing, that's something they really shouldn't, carriers really shouldn't be doing anymore. So a complaint to the Department of Insurance may help with that. But otherwise, I mean, look, you want to hire your own hygienist and do your own testing. If you can't get the insurance company to do it, sure, you could hire a lawyer and send a letter if you want. But I mean, you never want to sue an insurance company and just say, well, they didn't fully investigate, so, who knows what really the condition is. Unfortunately, if they don't do their job, you got to do it for them, and then shove it down their throats, right? And then try to get them to pay for it. In terms of denying ALE payments at this point, well, I mean, ALE should be continued until the investigation's concluded and there is a reasonable scope of work and the work has been performed, and the home has been cleared for returning. If the insurance company is trying to cut you off before any of that, then the insurance company is taking a position. It already completed its investigation and it already determined you should be back, and there's no more point in arguing with you anymore. So, I mean, if their investigation is done, then, well, what are your rights? Well, you have a claim denial, and so really the only way to actually force them to do anything is to sue them, and put them in front of a jury. Now, one thing to keep in mind, right, is the vast majority of these cases settle. Insurance companies want to settle disputes, but you don't really present a lot of risk to them until you have worked up your claim well. They've rejected it, and you have an attorney who's knows what they're doing, and has kind of shown them they're ready, willing, and able to take them to the distance. At that point, you pose a lot more risk. But I mean, before any of that, you're still in the group of people who a good percentage of are going to walk away and lose the war of attrition on it. So,
Right.
you want to build that pressure as soon as possible if they're denying it.
And
And
and I mean, if obviously, like, there are the California law that gives people up to 36 months only applies to total losses. So a lot of people are going to be facing 12 months of ALE, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, and if you're running out of your limit, you always can sue for additional out-of-pocket expenses, because the insurance company unreasonably delayed you, right, and caused you those damages.
right.
But the really hard thing is, well, how are you going to afford to stay out of your house, now that you don't have ALE coming? And, how are you going to afford to survive a potentially long legal battle, right? All those things are the insurance companies kind of think about when thinking about how much risk you pose to them. So, your staying power may be limited. You want to try to act sooner rather than later.
So, and I think, one of the reasons we don't have time for a deep breath, that we brought you this program tonight, and that, we identified EFRU and Team Palisades and Palisades Standing Homes, is that there is strength in numbers, and that we don't want you to feel like you're going to lose the war of attrition, then you're going to give up. And, I think there's a lot, every day we're talking to people about charitable funds for to help people with their rent. If their insurer has cut them off, and there's just a lot of energy going into bringing solutions to your community. So I just want to leave you with a message that we have survivor to survivor forums on a regular basis. They're a great informal, confidential way to come and talk with other people and draw strength from your neighbors who are grappling with a lot of the same problems that you have. And I know there's a lot of forums in LA, but our Survivor forums are run by our Annie Barber and a lot of our very experienced wildfire disaster survivor volunteers. So we really encourage you to try them out. They're really wonderful. These are some of the upcoming events that we have. This is out, not a right slide. Um, these are some of our past wildfires. This is our Ask an Expert forum. If you have a burning question that we did not get to tonight, you are welcome to use that forum. I want to thank our funders, the California Community Foundation, Pasadena Community Foundation, the Emergency Network of Los Angeles, and the Anthony Pritzker Family Foundation, for providing the funding that has allowed United Policyholders to be there from the very beginning at the disaster recovery centers, and to bring you programs like tonight. Our panel has been outstanding. So Dr. Joe Newsma, Chris Griffith, Janine Humphrey, Sean Rao, Dan Veroff, Sandy Moriarty, thank you so much. Thank you, Jane and Alyssa, for your collaboration. Thank you to Annie Barber, who's been our prime boots on the ground. Elise Mallory, who is our local liaison for the Eaton fire in Altadena. And all of the people that are not here tonight, but that have been giving us information so that we can turn around and give it to you. So to each of you, my deepest thanks. And to all of you out there, we are rooting for you. We know you're hurting. We know you're struggling. We know you're confused. And I hope that the information we've brought you tonight will clear up some of your confusion and also give you that strength to know that you are on a journey with a lot of other people, and there's a lot of work being done to bring solutions to you. So hang in there, and try to get through the holidays as best you can, with knowing that there is so much so much strength and support coming your way from a lot of sources. So with that, we're going to wrap up the webinar. The recording will be online. Thank you for your time and patience. We will be back in the new year with more programming with our friends, Alyssa, Jane, and our experts. And there's many, many more experts we have in the family to bring you. So good evening. Thank you.